Hey, all right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lookout. Today's the 9th of August, and we're going to take a look at the SRF fires, Lightning Fires burning Willow Creek. If this is your first time coming to Lookout, my name is Zeke Lunder. I'm a wildfire analyst, and I run the Lookout website and this channel, and we provide publicly funded, or I should say user-supported wildfire intelligence based out of Chico. We're not assigned to list fire. This is not official fire information. It is something that we do as our own side project. I've been working on fires, doing mapping since late 90s, and so it's just kind of something that I've got that I can share. So we like to do it. We're going to be showing intelligence today from infrared flights that were flown last night around 9 o'clock over Willow Creek area. This is public information that comes off public websites, and so no real inside scoop, just taking some public data, putting it into Google Earth, and then looking at it and interpreting it. Oftentimes I'm getting intel from friends of mine that are out on the fire, who are either working on hotshot crews or on just otherwise assigned. And so we'll jump in here. Just check out the live stream here, make sure everyone can hear me. We're still kind of figuring out the ins and outs of how this all works. Okay. So I'm going to jump right into our maps here. We're going to start off centered on Willow Creek. Here we're looking kind of east over the river at the fires. On these fire maps, the red is intense heat, and the yellow is areas that are cooling off, and the white is where the fire was about 24 hours ago. So as I said before, imagery shot at 9 p.m. So I want to talk about just how the fires are spreading. And we're going to start here with the Bremer fire, and we're going to work our way kind of around. So yeah, looking over Willow Creek and over the river at the Bremer fire. It's been backing steadily down the hill. And as we've talked about before here on the Lookout, lightning fires, they tend to start kind of up on the slope and then back down. And so in a lot of ways, you know, these naturally ignited fires, they're kind of set up for lower intensity than, I say, a human-caused fire. If we had a human-caused fire that started here at the end of this road here, it's going to run with the slope up the hill with a higher severity. It's going to cause more destruction. Lightning fires, by their nature, are usually largely backing fires. So you can see that here. The fire started up here. It's been slowly backing down the hill over the last week. And this line here, the white line, is yesterday's position of the fire. So you can see it spread slowly down. Oftentimes what we see in the steep ground is what we call rollout, you know, where a burning log rolls down a bit, then the little head fire goes back up. But this is kind of like your classic backing fire. And it's great for firefighters because it's giving them time to get line in here, prep structures. The fires just aren't moving that fast. You can see also by kind of the distance between the lines here that the fire really hasn't spread across the ridge except in a couple spots. So it has slopped down onto the north slope here, but it has kind of held, and we call this flanking fire, where it's kind of moving sideways on the slope. So the good news is that this fire really, it's not spreading quickly. There's been time for firefighters to prep, and given our kind of wind forecast, it's not likely that this fire is just going to kind of change its mind and start screaming downhill anytime today, at least. And but in general, pretty good odds that, you know, it's going to continue to back slowly. Firefighters going to have opportunities to engage it on kind of their own terms. Coming around here to Waterman fire, which was on my maps as Cedar fire yesterday. Kind of see the same thing. It backed down into the creek here, has not crossed the creek. What we do worry when fires are down here in these kind of bottomlands, that they're just kind of skunking around in driftwood in the riparian, and that potentially they could cross the creek and make a run up. And we call that a slope reversal when it happens. But for the last several days, the fire's been in the bottom here and it has not crossed the creek here. It has slopped over the ridge also, but as you can see from the 24-hour growth, where the 24-hour growth line matches the red line, that means there's been no growth there in the last 24 hours. So this has got line, and it's held. It's grown a little down here in this ground here, which it's steep ground. It's to be expected. And likely it'll continue to grow there unless they're going to get crews in direct, which is, I don't have any intel on how this particular part of the fire is being fought, but you know, it's over the hill, it's into this other drainage. Likely that it'll continue to spread. That's the Waterman fire, formerly known as China. Okay, so now we're coming back to looking a little more north. There's been speculation that these two fires would grow together, really that all three of these fires would grow together. Right now, unless we see a slope reversal on this fire, I don't know if that's going to happen. This fire's been hasn't been moving much. There's decent access here, and it's a high priority. So I wouldn't be surprised if this fire stays as its own fire and Waterman maybe grows back out to the north. But so far, so good on the fire closest to town. Coming here to the Campbell fire. We've been talking about this one for a couple of days now, too. We talked about yesterday how we were concerned about the fire making a run up in this canyon, and that did happen. The good news on this fire is just that it hasn't been moving quickly downhill into the populated areas. There's this kind of infrared area here. Sorry, I don't know the street names here for you, but but there's this kind of finger here of fire that looks kind of scary. But when you look at the operations map, there's dozer line that is punched through here and around the back of all these homes, ties into the road here, comes around and goes above these homes here too. And so I think this might be firing operation off the dozer line. I can't say for sure, but there is a dozer line right there. And so last night, as of 9 p.m., the fire hadn't crossed that dozer line as far as I can tell on this mapping. So that is also a really good deal. Still see some flanking fire here in Quimby Creek, moving upstream. We talked about, just being worried that this run here is going to continue to move out and could merge up with these fires, even if these fires get wrapped. But what we have seen so far is that the fires aren't spreading incredibly quickly as flanking fires, and this fire would really have to flank a long way to get there. So the bigger concern is that it gets into drainage and can kind of make a run up the drainage. A lot of the times what we see on these lightning fires is just that things don't happen very quickly. As you've been seeing with all the smoke, these fires lay under a thick layer of smoke for hours a day. Sometimes, on the stable days, like the smoke never lifts at all. So that really suppresses the fire behavior. If we had a fire start here on a hot summer day with no smoke in the air and it started in the morning and had a whole day to run, you'd see a lot different fire behavior. You'd see this whole drainage getting taken out in a single burning period. But with the smoke we've got, the burning period, which is what we call the time of the day that the fire is most active, it can be really short. The smoke might not lift out till 3 p.m. The fire can run for 3 or 4 hours, and then the sun goes down, the shadows get long, the humidities come up, and the fire lays down again. So these lightning busts are really kind of their own kind of special animal. Just to look more around Campbell, the fire here hasn't spread down the hill towards the river in the last 24 hours, and it's spread a little here. You can see the white line from 24 hours ago. It's continued to kind of just chew its way, flanking through this country. That slow rate of spread is giving firefighters time to prep these structures. I think we'll expect to see it continue to be fought off the road and to spread out through here and burn this north slope. One thing that we've been seeing, one thing we often see, is that even though we're in midsummer conditions with the smoke inversions and all this backing fire, is that we might get a lot of really good fire effects out of this fire with it moving slowly, not really making big head runs. And that basically, if the firefighters can hold this here, this might end up looking like we did a big prescribed burn. Another thing that's an opportunity, and I know that it's hard to be excited about this when you're evacuated from your house and suffering and anxious. And I'm not trying to minimize any of that. Having been through evacuations and smoke and fire trauma around here, know it's real. And but one thing that we have an opportunity in, especially with all the momentum that you're building with your local prescribed burn association, is that once this is all burned, there's going to be opportunities to put prescribed fire on the ground here in the fall in the neighborhoods that would have been really hard to do before. If I have got a piece of chunk of land here and I want to burn it, and this whole side of the road hasn't had fire for 100 years, there's a high risk of me putting fire on the ground here. But once this is all burned, you're going to have an opportunity to put fire on the ground in your yards, in your neighborhoods, in your open spaces, and that should be seized. This fire, as miserable as it is buying your community a level of protection from larger wildfires for the next decade, and it's a good opportunity to put more fire on the ground as soon as possible after this. And even when people are cleaning up the dozer lines out here, rehabbing, you should be thinking about how you could potentially use those lines for community scale prescribed burns. And maybe you get involved with the Forest Service and say, hey, let's not close that dozer line completely because we want to burn here in the fall. But we have to take every advantage we can in getting more fire on the ground. And like it or not, wildfire is kind of part of that calculus. So all in all, I'd say things are looking good on this northern half. The backside of the fire is, going to do what it's going to do. But firefighters have had time to do a lot of prep here, and the terrain is set up in your favor. I've had some questions about whether or not the fire might jump the river. What we can see from looking at a lot of the fire history around here is it's pretty rare. The river is giant fire break, really. And we just don't see that happening a lot. So I think that in general, if you're living across from this fire right now, it's pretty good odds it's going to stay on its side of the river. Jumping out here down to the south branch, the fire command team has kind of created what we call branches, which are subdivisions of the fire command. And there's a south branch and north branch. Everything south of the river is in that south branch. We've got the Ammon fire here. I don't know the Ammons, but someone mentioned that they're probably not very happy that there's a fire named after them. So sorry that happened to you. But on the positive note, your names are going to be on maps for a long time. Yesterday we were looking at some spots. So we got the Ammon fire, the Oak fire, and the Charlie fire here. Charlie hasn't moved a lot, but it is still got some open line. And we were looking at whether or not we thought the Oak fire and Ammon fire would burn together. And the spots that we saw yesterday continue to grow. You can see from the white line, all these little white spots were stuff we saw yesterday morning on the IR. And those have continued to grow. This side of the Ammon fire has not grown. So potentially, if they do join, it's going to be because Oak is greedy and headed that way. Ammon fire yesterday, we had kind of a southeasterly flow of wind, and it made its biggest push kind of out to the northwest. And just like the other fires, starts on the top of a hill, backs down the slope, and then flanks a lot, and you get, kind of just all kinds of spread where it can't really run up the slope much. Then it backed down, and we had a slope reversal on this fire across kind of the top of Madden Creek, and it ran up. So yesterday morning, day before yesterday, I think it had already established itself pretty well and spotted out. So what we see right now is the fire did go over the top of Friday Ridge, is spotted down on the other side. And we've got the main ridge here that's comes off of Berry Summit. And yesterday there was a huge air show going on this ridge kind of between Titlow Hill and Spikebuck Mountain, where there was, probably at least 25 large air tankers did retardant drops and kind of are prepping this ridge in case the fire decides to push it, which yesterday it was kind of moving obliquely. There's kind of some interesting geography going on here. These east winds in most places aren't as common in the summertime. And we've got South Fork Mountain south of here, which is the longest. This is a little map trivia here, but South Fork Mountain is one of the longest ridges in the lower 48, if not the longest, coming up from the South Fork Trinity. And so the South Fork Trinity Canyon is kind of unique in that we don't have a lot of major rivers in California that flow to the northeast, or northwest, sorry. So we do get kind of the canyon effect here of the landscape scale winds pushing up to the northwest here. So that you can see that really affected the Ammon fire yesterday. The general winds today are forecast to kind of stay fairly out of the west, which will be beneficial for having this fire not be slamming hard on this ridge here. On the Oak fire, the fire hasn't been moving much at all down in the bottom here of Madden Creek. I don't really know what's going on down in there for firefighting, but it's been several days now that it hasn't reversed slope and ran up Friday Ridge. There's still strong potential for that to happen. But I want to show you another website here that's it's pretty helpful. This is called Caltopo. And Caltopo is great. It's a free mapping website. You can pay a little extra annual subscription and get a bunch of different features. But it's really good because you can make your own maps in here, and it's got all kinds of different base maps. It's got the U.S. Forest Service topo maps with great detail and place names. It's got a layer that calls in the mapped perimeters from the National Fire Interagency Fire Center. And I like it because you can do wind forecasts on here. So right now I'm showing the fire activity layer. You can turn on parcels. You can turn on structures. And you can see that there's not a lot of structures right out here in this area of the Ammon fire. You can turn on public lands and see what's Forest Service versus private. You can put shading on the steep slopes. And what's nice about it is when it's all done, then you can print out a PDF, or you can take the same PDF and you can load it into a app we use in the field called Avenza Maps. So it's pretty cool just to have all this at your disposal. Basically, what the wind plots show me is that 9 hours from now in this afternoon, we're going to have a generally kind of prevailing southwesterly flow, and it's going to be a little swirly out in here, based on the topography and everything else, but these winds are favorable for keeping these fires we have right now out of Willow Creek. So check out Caltopo. I recommend floating them a donation, and buying the more advanced version if you're going to use it regularly, just because that's how they make their money, and they're developing a really great product. You can see the parcel data here, where we've got the real kind of dense urban area. You can also get the ownership if you pay them the $19 a year, and so that's pretty interesting too, to see who owns what land. Anyway, Caltopo, it's great. So that's about it for this morning. We've been covering the McKinney and Yeti fires. There's really not much going on there now. There's some kind of interior heat on McKinney that's burning out, and the Yeti fire hasn't really grown. So we won't really be covering those much anymore, unless something crazy happens, which we don't expect. Someone just mentioned that we've got the 2021 knob fire, and I'll point that out. This fire here creates a really nice buffer in that it reduced the fuels between these fires and the populated areas along the river. And this fire also creates those opportunities to do some prescribed burning down in here along the river. We call this kind of a catcher's mitt. When you've got a big black area on the landscape that is going to keep your prescribed burn from getting away from you. Anyhow, that's it for now. We appreciate your support. Lookout supported by donations. We've got a donate tab on the Lookout, the-lookout.org. And if you like what we're doing, if you can make a subscription donation, like $5 a month or something, that helps us pay the bills through the course of the year. And while you're on our channel, please check out some of our interviews and stuff about prescribed fire and stuff about forestry. And that's the kind of stuff that our users are supporting. Thanks, everyone, and good luck.